And today we are going to be previewing tomorrow's card, which is UFC on ESPN 15. Like I said, this is the second episode of this, and last week we had UFC 252. So just a quick recap of the picks from last week. We lost on both of our undercard bets in Parker Porter, who I assumed was going to wrestle his way to a decision, but didn't get the chance as he got knocked out in the first round, which obviously is a tough look. Jim Miller, who was my underdog play, he lost a decision. 29-28 was a fair score. It was 1-1 going into the third, but was on his back for the majority of the fight. And then on the main card, Herbert Burns lost as one of the biggest favorites on the card, if not the biggest, depending on your book. And this is one of those fights that, I don't think that I could have picked it any other way. I grew up with my dad watching horse racing, and he always said that he would go back and see if he missed something that would get him the winner, and that's what I did in this fight. And, I didn't see anything. 10 times out of 10, I would have picked Herbert Burns to win, but he got submitted. So, we just got to move on from that one. And then also, the last loss that I had was Sean O'Malley, who, if anyone watched the fight, he had this weird, early in the first round, he threw a kick or he landed on his leg weird, or something happened with his ankle. And reports are saying it's like nerve damage. So just a weird situation there, which is tough because O'Malley was one of the biggest rising stars in the UFC, and still is. But a loss to Chito Vera was a big step back. The wins we had were Verna Jandiroba. She dominated Felice Herrig with a submission in the first. Merab Dvalishvili beat Dodson by decision. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who I gave out as my best bet of the card at minus 120, knocked out JDS. And then for the main event, Stipe and Cormier, I said the best bet of the fight was the fight to enter the fourth round at minus 105. So overall, 4-4, 3-2 on the main card, hoping for a little bit better this time around, but wouldn't be mad with the same results. So the first fight that we want to look at in this one is, I believe it's still on the undercard. It's Mizuki Inoue versus Amanda Lemos. And Inoue is a slight favorite here, but in my opinion should be probably a little bit bigger of a favorite. And it's mainly because of Lemos' inexperience. She's only fought 2 fighters in her career that had more than 3 fights at the time, and one of those was 9-7. But with that being said, her last win was against Miranda Granger, who is a solid win. And Inoue is a former Invicta FC title challenger. She actually fought for the belt against Jandiroba, who we saw last week, and lost split decision. And we saw what Jandiroba just did to Felice Herrig last week. And if you ask me, Herrig's better than Lemos, so you can do with that however you please. But Inoue also has an advantage on the ground. She's a better wrestler. She has 9 submission wins. She's gone to decision 5 times, only 1 knockout. But she's also a former kickboxer, so she does have some decent striking. And also Inoue's losses are to pretty decent people. I'm not going to go into the whole resume, but she's better than Lemos, if you ask me, and I think minus 140 is pretty good value in the fight. And now on to the main card, which the first fight is Daniel Rodriguez and Takashi Sato. If anyone was watching the Fight Island fights, you saw Sato with an impressive win over Jason Witt, but D-Rod is on an 8-fight win streak since joining the UFC. He's beaten people like Tim Means and Gabe Green, which are some decent wins for a mid-level fighter. But Sato has also beaten Ben Saunders and, like I said, Jason Witt. And I actually did fight Bilal Muhammad, which is a pretty big step up in competition, but did lose that one. And I think this fight's closer than the odds say. I think minus 185 is a little bit of a stretch for D-Rod. But with that being said, I still think he is my pick to win the fight, but I don't love the odds. I definitely think Sato's a live dog. Might be worth a bet for people looking for value. But if I have to pick one here, I'm going with D-Rod. And moving on to the third fight of the card, which, I don't even know why it's here, but it's Mariya Agapova, who's 9-1. You see her odds are minus 1250, so that gives you a little bit of insight onto what this fight's going to be. versus Shana Dobson, who is 3-4 overall, which you almost never see people with under 500 records in the UFC. And she's coming back at plus 800. And so, as the odds show here, this is just a total mismatch. I don't even know why this is booked. I get it. Agapova called out Dobson after her last fight. I don't know why she would do that. But nonetheless, the fight is booked, and I think it's a total mismatch. Agapova is arguably the next big thing. She's 23 years old. She's coming off a first-round finish of Hannah Cifers, who, if you follow the sport, is a staple in the women's divisions. And Dobson is 0-3 since joining the UFC, and the losses are to average at best fighters. And I believe her last win, a lot of people question whether or not it was even a real knockout. It's a pretty sketchy clip if you look it up. She punched her girl in the face, and she pretty much took a dive seconds after it landed. I don't know if there was a rig in play, but even her wins are not impressive is what I'm trying to get at. And I think this is pretty much just a good place for Agapova to make a push, get some exposure, so they can start pushing her as the next thing in the women's division, because let's face it, they need some new faces in there. But getting into the actual fight itself, Dobson has very simple striking defense, almost no head movement. I think she's only outlanded her opponents once in her entire career, and I don't think she's ever actually outthrown her opponent. And she has also never stuffed a single takedown. She's 0-6 in takedowns in her UFC career. So I think this is just going to be a slaughter, to be completely honest. Agapova has submission skills. She can also knock people out. And obviously, some of her fights do go to decision. So I don't know how this one's going to end, but I would be completely shocked if Dobson somehow manages to win this one. And the pre-co-main, we got Mike Rodriguez, Slow Mike, versus Marcin Prachnio. And this is kind of a weird fight. It's another one where I don't know why we're seeing this fight of all of the possible ones. But Rodriguez is 10-4, minus 235, and Prachnio is plus 190 as an underdog with a 13-4 record. So Prachnio is 0-2 in the UFC, getting knocked out twice in the first round by Sam Alvey and Magomed Ankalaev, I believe is how you pronounce it. But also Rodriguez is kind of had a push at the beginning of his career. He joined the UFC through the Contender Series, had a flying knee knockout, and so had some hype coming in, but since then has lost to Devin Clark, and also some other guys, and lost to and his one win is Adam Milstead, who is a mid-level fighter at best. But one trend in this fight is Prachnio is a heavy-handed striker. He definitely goes in there looking for a finish. 10 of his 13 wins are by knockout. And while Slow Mike does less of that, he still looks to finish fights. And he likes to throw some wilder kicks. He's more of a kickboxer. Try to keep him at range. So I think both these guys are going to come out swinging, hoping to end the fight, because I don't think either of them are that good, and they know that. So they just kind of want to get in there and get their win. Don't leave it up to the judges. So I'm not going to take anyone on this for the fight line, but I think the bet that I like the most is the fight to not start round 3 at minus 185. And if you're feeling risky and think it's going to be a first-round knockout, you can get under 1.5 rounds at minus 120. So that might be worth a bet too, but I say play it safe at minus 185 for fight to not start round 3. And now moving on to the co-main, we got Alonzo Menifield, who's 9-1, as the slight favorite in this fight at minus 125 versus Vince St. Preux, who 24-14 and coming back as of the slightest of underdogs at plus 105. So both of these guys had pretty lackluster performances in their last fight, but I think OSP will probably be the most popular underdog pick on the card, but I just don't think he's what he used to be. Former title challenger, fought John Jones, but he kind of has a tendency of losing big fights. Not saying this is a big fight by any means. Menifield is a above average opponent, but this isn't going to do anything for OSP's legacy, which at this point is kind of all he should be fighting for at, I think, 38 years old. But he is famous. He's been in the light heavyweight division for a while, but he's arguably most famous for his submission game and his rare submissions. He has 4 Von Flue chokes. People start to call it the Von Prue choke, which honestly might be worthy of the name. But it's only been performed, I think, 5 or 6 times, and he's got 4 of them. And maybe it should be named after him. But in his most recent fight, OSP moved up to heavyweight and took on Ben Rothwell. And in a pretty boring fight, lost a split decision. But if you ask me, it was probably a pretty clear loss for him. He didn't really have much output, and he looked kind of scared just backing up the whole fight. But the thing about OSP is he is a good wrestler. But if he can't wrestle Ben Rothwell, I don't see him being able to take down Alonzo. So this is more of me just being not on OSP rather than me being confident about Menafield. But if we have to look at Alonzo's record, he is 9-1, does have 8 knockouts, and I think he bounces back from his decision loss to Devin Clark with a good performance, not great, but I think at this point in OSP's career, all you need to be is good to beat him. And now on to the main event. It is Pedro Munhoz versus Frankie Edgar in Frankie Edgar's bantamweight debut. So fans of the sport will know Frankie Edgar's a legend in the sport, but not at this division. He was best at lightweight. After he got knocked down the rankings a little bit in lightweight, he moved to featherweight and tried making a career there. And after a couple losses now where he is not going to get a title shot, which again, he's old. I think he's only really fighting for legacy. He is now moving down to bantamweight. So he's going from 155 to 135. Fighters usually go up in weight, but Frankie Edgar is deciding to go down and looking to make another run at a title in a different division. But I still don't think that this is that good of a fight. There's a trend in UFC where the best fighters don't retire when they should, and it hurts their legacy. And I think Frankie Edgar is on that same path. He's lost his last 2 fights, which is the reason why he's leaving the division, and 4 of his last 7 fights overall. But he does have the experience that not many other people have in UFC history. He's fought some of the top names. He's fought BJ Penn 3 times, who was arguably top 3 in the lightweight rankings all time, depending on how you want to rank them. But, I mean, he's fought everybody. But like I said, the trend in UFC is people stay around too long, and you just see some bad fights. Like I think of Anderson Silva, who is still fighting now, BJ Penn, Chuck Liddell. I mean, the list goes on and on. But Munhoz is actually on a good run himself. He did knock out Cody Garbrandt, which is a good win considering Cody's about to get a title shot in a division that he's also hasn't fought in a while. So interesting move by the UFC, but nonetheless, he did knock out Cody and then lost a decision to Aljamain Sterling. But Aljo should be getting the title shot over Cody, if you ask me. So Aljo's not a bad loss at all. But you know, it's just it's tough for me to see a way where Frankie Edgar wins this fight. I think the only way it happens is if this fight somehow moves into the late rounds and Munhoz just kind of gasses out, because Frankie does have a ton of experience going into late rounds. He's been in a handful of title fights in his career, but you don't know how the extra weight cut's going to affect his gas tank, as it is his first time fighting down at bantamweight. But I mean, like I said, I don't see this fight being that competitive. I think Pedro can finish this relatively early on. If it goes into the title rounds, I think maybe the 4th. I don't think this should go to a decision. But that is Frankie Edgar's only chance at winning, if you ask me. So I like Munhoz to win inside the distance, but minus 265, depending on how you want to play it, isn't great value, but it's decent enough. And yeah, so that's the whole card. It's not great, especially considering what we've had recently with Fight Island and UFC 252 last week. We've been getting blessed with some very good cards, and now we're kind of moving down a rank here. But nonetheless, quick pick recap. I like Mizuki Inui at minus 140. I think that is very good value on her, like I said. And in the Takashi and D-Rod fight, minus 185 scares me a little bit because I do think it's closer than that, but I do think that Rodriguez has the edge. And then Agapova inside the distance is minus 365. I don't see any situation why this should go to a decision. I already talked about how bad Dobson really is. So minus 365 for a finish is still not good odds in the sport, but given the matchup, it's pretty much the best you can do. Best fight for Rodriguez Prachnio. Fight not to start the third round. You can get that at minus 185, which is decent value. Alonzo Menafield minus 125 over OSP, and Pedro Munhoz at minus 265. So I know it's kind of a boring card. I picked all favorites here. I usually try not to do that, but with a card like this, not really much else I can do. If you are looking for underdogs, like I said, Takashi Sato at plus 160 is going to be a good pick. And also Marcin Prachnio at plus 190, just because I think they're going to come out swinging. And obviously, in UFC, you only need to mess up for 1 second, catch a hit, or catch a punch in the wrong part of your head, and you can be flash knocked out. So always good to have some live dogs. I mean, I guess OSP would be the other one if he does manage to get to the ground. And I don't know, maybe we see another Von Flue choke. But either way, I think I'm going straight chalk with all the favorites on the money lines. And, I hope for a good week. So fights are tomorrow night, free on ESPN. Don't need to buy them on pay-per-view. So tune in, get some bets in, make it a little bit more exciting for yourself. As like I said, not the best card. But so there they are, 6 total picks, 5 on the main card, as I always will do, and 1 fight on the undercard. So thank you guys for tuning in. This is Nick Mazone. And for people that want to come back and see picks for NBA and MLB, Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m. I'm here every day. So tune in for them, get you some underdog picks, get you some good value. But until next week, I'll see you guys later.